All right, so we're diving into the world of Claudio Monteverdi today, a composer who lived from 1567 to 1643, straddling, the Renaissance and the Baroque
A
periods.
real pivotal figure.
Yeah, we've got this summary of his life, and I guess the mission is to go beyond just the music, to
Yeah.
see Monteverdi as a person making his way through, well, the musical world, but also just the world in Italy back then.
It was a fascinating time. A lot of change happening musically. You have these older ideas giving way to new ones. And Monteverdi was in the thick of it, embodying that shift, I think. So we're going to look at his personal journey, his career as a musician in Italy, alongside those amazing innovations he brought to music.
So let's start at the beginning then. Born in Cremona, 1567.
Mm.
And our summary mentions that his early musical training, this was under Marcantonio Ingegneri, gave him, and I'm quoting here, a solid grounding in counterpoint and composition.
The fundamentals.
Sounds like pretty rigorous training in the established ways of doing things.
Absolutely. Before you can break the rules, you have to understand them thoroughly. It's like learning a language before you can write poetry.
Mm.
And we see that early mastery, that early voice in his first publications, like the Sacre Cantuncule from 1582.
And then, around 1590, he lands a position in the service of Duke Vincenzo I Gonzaga of Mantua. What's interesting is that he initially got in not as a composer, but as a viola da gamba player.
Right. The vivuola, as he called it.
And he even wrote, and this is a quote, "The most noble exercise of the vivuola opened to me the fortunate way into your service."
Practical realities of a musician's life back then. You had to be versatile. You couldn't just say, I'm a composer. You needed lots of skills to make a living, to gain patronage. Clearly, the Duke was impressed with his playing. And then in 1601, he's promoted to Maestro di Cappella.
A sign that he was rising in the ranks. And as the 17th century rolled around, Monteverdi found himself in the middle of this debate, a clash between what people were calling modern music and the established rules. And the Bolognese theorist Giovanni Maria Artusi, he becomes a real vocal critic of Monteverdi's work.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is that Artusi's criticisms weren't aimed at Monteverdi's published works. They were based on unpublished pieces. He saw these pieces, and he felt they were straying too far from the orthodox polyphonic practice of the 16th century. That's from our summary. So he was really reacting to what he perceived as a break from the accepted rules of harmony and the traditional use of musical modes.
So Monteverdi wasn't just quietly innovating. His new ideas were making waves, causing a stir in the musical community. And his response, which was articulated by his brother Giulio Cesare, introduced the concept of the Seconda Pratica.
Right. And the Seconda Pratica was not meant to be a complete rejection of the older style, the Prima Pratica, what we associate with the Renaissance. It was more like an evolution. Monteverdi saw it as a way to give more emphasis to the text, to the words.
So the words would drive the music, even if it meant stretching some of the traditional harmonic rules.
Precisely. And he even planned a publication never quite came out as intended, but it was called Seconda Pratica, Ovvero Perfezione della Moderna Musica, in which he intended to lay out these ideas more fully. So it wasn't just about breaking the rules for the sake of it. There was real thought behind it, a philosophy of music. It's really revolutionary because it changes the way we think about music. It's not just about following rules, it's about using music to express emotions, to create drama. And that leads us directly to opera, because Monteverdi's L'Orfeo from 1607 is considered, and again I'm quoting our summary, the earliest of the genre still widely performed.
And that really says something about its lasting power.
It does. It may not have been the very first opera ever, but it has survived and it's still performed regularly. And that's a testament to its quality, its musical and dramatic sophistication. Monteverdi was a master at blending vocal melodies, instrumental textures, and dramatic expression. And then after L'Orfeo, he wrote Arianna for Mantua in 1608. And one thing that's really amazing about L'Orfeo is the way Monteverdi uses instruments. It's not just a generic orchestra playing along. He assigns specific instruments to characters and to different dramatic situations, so the music really becomes a part of the storytelling in a way that wasn't done before.
Sadly, most of Arianna is lost. Only Ariadne's Lament has survived. So much art is lost to time. Makes you think about what we might be missing.
It does. We have contemporary accounts that suggest that Arianna was incredibly moving, and even just Ariadne's Lament, the fragment that remains, is incredibly powerful. You get a sense of the emotional depth of the whole opera. And this period in Mantua wasn't just marked by artistic triumphs for Monteverdi. He also faced some real personal tragedies.
Our summary mentions the death of his wife and also of a singer who was supposed to sing a major role in Arianna.
It must have been a very difficult time for him to lose your spouse, to lose a colleague. It's hard to imagine what that must have been like. But it also adds a human dimension to this, larger-than-life figure of Monteverdi.
And then in 1613, after all this, he moves to Venice and becomes Maestro di Cappella at the Basilica of San Marco. And his salary goes up, which I guess is a sign that he was held in pretty high regard.
Oh, absolutely. San Marco was one of the most important musical institutions in Italy. So this appointment shows just how highly regarded Monteverdi was. And despite the demands of the job, he was composing like crazy.
Yeah, like the Vespro della Beata Vergine from 1610,
Mhm.
a large-scale sacred work, and later on, the Selva Morale Spirituale.
But he didn't abandon opera. In fact, the rise of public opera houses in Venice, he embraced this new venue, this commercial aspect of opera. And we see this in operas like Il ritorno d'Ulisse in Patria from 1640 and L'Incoronazione di Poppea, composed in 1643, just before his death.
And what about his contemporaries? How did they see him?
Well, we have this intriguing quote from the introduction to Le Nos d'Enea e Lavinia. Someone writes, "He will be sighed for in later ages, for his compositions will surely outlive the ravages of time." And they were right.
They were, but it's not all praise. There's this other quote in our summary. It's not very nice. It says, quote, "The director of music comes from a brood of cutthroat bastards, a thieving fucking he-goat, and I shit on him and whoever protects him." End quote.
A bit harsh.
It is. We don't know who said it or exactly why, but it does remind us that even the most celebrated artists can have enemies, can face personal attacks.
So looking back at his life, it's quite a journey, from those early days in Cremona through the ups and downs of court life in Mantua, the debates about his music, the personal tragedies, and then ultimately this incredible success in Venice. He really was a bridge between two eras, leading music from the Renaissance into the Baroque. And he changed opera forever. And he wasn't always appreciated. After his death in 1643, his music was largely forgotten for a while. It was only in the 20th century that he was really rediscovered.
And now he's seen as one of the giants of Western music.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, this guy had so much talent, so much creativity, but he also had to deal with a lot of challenges. And to create such groundbreaking music, to navigate all those complex social and professional situations, to face those personal tragedies, it's pretty incredible.
It is, and it makes you wonder about the connection between his life and his music. Did those difficult experiences, those joys and sorrows, did they somehow find their way into his music, giving it that incredible emotional power and that dramatic intensity that we still experience today?
It's something to think about.